Okay, you might be wondering what I'm talking about. You know, why would I want to play better for the guitar's sake? Shouldn't I just want to play better anyway? I mean, yes, that's true, and I always try to play better. But sometimes, and this was the case with this guitar, there's something so special about it that it actually sort of puts you on the spot a bit. And I have a bit of a history with this guitar, which I'll tell you about. But throughout this video, you're going to see me make multiple attempts to play some blues. Right, it's going to be over the same loop that you saw at the beginning. And as I said, I'm not a bassist. I've probably played bass for 20 minutes in my life, so it doesn't sound like a bass player. And apologies for that. Although it is something I want to start putting some practice into, because just to be able to lay my own bass loops would be a bit of a game changer for me, actually, I think. And for anyone, right? Loops are great. I'll tell you more about the gear. I'll tell you about the amp and the pedals in a minute. I want to talk to you about this guitar. And why it came, it went, and it's come back, and I don't think it's going to be going again. So this is a guitar made by Giordano. That's Nico Giordano. He's an Italian luthier. He's quite a young guy. I don't know exactly his age, but I know he's quite young. And he is making, I personally think, possibly the best guitars in the world, if you like the vintage style aesthetic, the look and feel of it, except I've not played an instrument or heard of an instrument of his on clips or talked to other people who've played his instruments at shows and things that isn't just probably the best thing you've ever played. And I've had the pleasure of playing 4 of his guitars. This is one of them. I've played 2 juniors and I've played a burst. And well, safe to say that burst, which I can't buy, it belongs to someone else. I don't know if he wants me to name him. Well, that might have been the best guitar I've played, at least of the Gibson type. Except that's not shaped like a Gibson. This one is, and then Nico had to move over to his own shape, which is called the Tributo, I think. And it's a gorgeous shape in itself. I'm not always a huge fan of when a maker has to make a different single cut shape, sometimes I don't think it works, but in his case it does. And if you check out his Instagram, you can probably find some on there. He makes exquisite instruments. But this one, okay, this popped up on an Italian guitar website some time ago, maybe a year ago. And I wasn't looking for any guitar actually. I just, every week or so, like probably a lot of you, I just sort of surf the net, Reverb and a few guitar shops and just have some fun thinking about it. But I'd heard Giordano being talked about so much. From my friend Stuart at Sunbear, who's got 3 of his guitars, to people like Sasha Ivantich, who had his SG made by him, Lennart Dellison, who's a great guitar player. You can find him on Instagram. He's a great blues player. He's got some of his guitars. And then I talked to other people who'd ordered. And this popped up, and it was the most beautiful looking guitar I think I'd ever seen. And I'd been wanting a black Les Paul. If you follow my channel, you know that I later bought a Les Paul Custom, which I have, a 3 pickup Gibson custom shop one with the Bigsby, and it's an aesthetic I love. But there's a reason I wanted this type, the sort of 55 custom with a staple pickup, and this one has a P90 in the bridge. I'll tell you about the pickups in a minute. It's because I once saw a clip of Jimi Hendrix playing a guitar exactly like that, and people are surprised to hear that he didn't always play Strats. He tried all sorts, in fact, but there is a famous clip, it's not very long, of him playing one of these, and I think he really liked them, but overall his thing was the Fender thing, and he was just trying out some Gibsons, and he, you know, we know he played other Gibsons, SGs and Flying Vs. So I'd had this sort of thing in my head about wanting to try one, and what was that about, but they don't often come up. If you notice at the moment, if you look around for fun like I do, actually a few of the retailers have got some staple Black Beauties from the custom shop, so they must have done a run in the last few months. But generally, you can go a long time without finding them. And if you see one with a staple from Gibson, well, historically they didn't remake the staple, they just made a P90 and put staple pieces in there. And then I think Seymour Duncan was making the actual staples. Now you've got a variety of makers making them. Right, I'm sort of garbling this because I'm too excited. Let's take a look at the guitar really close up. I'll talk you through exactly what it is. And since this was made, Nico has had to move into a larger warehouse and employ someone to help him, who I think he's training. His name is on the rise. His prices are going up. I had a quote for him to build me a burst maybe a year ago, and then I got a quote just now, and it's had to go up. Costs have increased, but also his name is getting more well known. These guitars are just to die for. Right, let's have a look. Oh, but first, we can hear me trying to play a bit more blues. I'm going to stop and start that a lot in this video because, as I said, it makes me want to rise to a challenge, and I don't feel like I'm meeting it, although I'm loving the sound that's coming out of here. first thing to note is it's very hard to film an all black guitar, an issue I've had with every black guitar, so I've tried my best here. I'll overlay some close-up footage to help you out, but really lighting this thing without getting reflections is nigh on impossible. I wonder what it was like on black and white television as well. It must have been quite hard. But anyway, this is the 53 to 55 variant, I would say, because there was speed knobs involved here. Well, actually, I think the custom started in 54, so let's say 54 to 55. Now, a custom at this time was black with the extra bindings, like the big binding on the headstock, round the body, and all mahogany. There's no maple cap on this, which I think is possibly the most important part about this, along with the pickups, of course. But for quite a few years, at least through the 50s, it was all mahogany. In the very late 60s, it became like a pancake body, and that's a different story altogether. But the customs were all mahogany. I think maybe it gives it a bit more brashness in some ways. If you turn some gain on, these things really fly. Now, the details that Giordano has gone into are just incredible. I'm going to put up some close-ups of his relic work. His relic work is so damn cool. I've seen some of his Strats and other guitars. They just look brilliant. So if you're into relic, then he's the man, to be honest. One thing to say, though, is I think this was the era of the Fretless Wonder, and this is not a Fretless Wonder, thank God. He decided to change that. I've seen a catalogue from the mid-50s, a Gibson one, and the custom was sold as the Fretless Wonder. As in, because it had low frets, you could slide up and down and do your jazzy goodness that way. But of course, once we got into more rock stuff and more bending and all of that stuff, I suspect that's when we became unhappy with those. So it doesn't have that. What it does have, which I think is the key now, is a staple in the neck and a bridge P90. Now, a staple, could we call it a variant of the P90? I shall save that for the experts. But what it does offer you is, to me, a bit more bottom end and a bit more clarity. It's less quacky. So for a neck pickup, I think it's fantastic. I haven't actually tried one in the bridge yet, but it gives me a sort of stratiness, which I think is fantastic, because often, let's say on a humbucker Les Paul, you get a bit too much darkness in the neck and a bit muddy, but the clarity, hi-fi nature of the P90, of the staple P90, is just brilliant. And this is a real one. This, well, when I say a real one, as in made the proper way. It doesn't have the extra height adjusters of some of the actual originals, because that's not really convenient these days, and having to take out more wood and everything. This is made by Stuart at Sunbear, who is one of the few makers. So Seymour Duncan make them, and then there's a couple of other makers who I can't remember the names of. In the UK as well, there's one, maybe Mojo Pickups. But this, I mean, look at the detail on the aging and everything of this. It's just glorious, and it sounds great. Now, the bridge is another matter. This is an actual original P90 from this era. Again, this was sourced by Stuart at Sunbear for this. Well, he already had this, but I bought it for this guitar. I'm not sure the exact age, whether it's a 54 or 5, but it's one of those. And I think it was worth putting in this. I also have one similar one in my Double Cut Junior. If you're on the channel, you've seen that before. It's a dog ear P90 in there from a similar era. And there's something you get from those, the quack, the feeling that it's like a microphone, the most dynamic sorts of pickups, really, the P90. So I thought it was, for this guitar, really special that I wanted to put an original in. And whilst they're expensive, they're nothing like PAFs. You know, you're not paying 10 grand for these. This is like £800 for a P90. It's a lot, but you could spend that on a couple of Strymon pedals. So I'm happy to do it for this. Then in the bridge, we've put a KMS, that's Kiss My Strings. They make bridges with the original Gibson materials from this era. And I want to do a video about these bridges and putting on the standard current one and this one and see what the difference is. But tend to find that everything just sounds a bit better, basically. Maybe a bit more bloom, a bit more sustain, and just more of the guitar coming through. And then like look at the work on the aging of these knobs, you know, the way the color is and everything. Just, I know, like if you're not into this stuff, you're probably thinking, what on earth is he talking about? It's just knobs and it's just a bridge and it's just pickups. But come on, look at it. If we look on the back, what I like with what Nico's doing is he even does the sort of ugly relic. On these, there's like gouges and badge wear, buckle wear, you know, from belts. Not that I wear a big buckle anymore. I did used to. But this to me looks like some real ones that I've seen. Like he's really gone to town on it. But although he's done some aging on the back of the neck, importantly, he's kept it playable. So there's nothing that's too difficult there or too much varnish come off, which I had a 56 Junior, a vintage one, and that had really melted off the wear on that, and it was not so easy to play. Okay, so I said I'd tell you what gear I was using in this and the amp. This is a 1967 vintage Super Reverb that I got last year. I love this amp for bluesy stuff with humbuckers and P90s. Often, I guess this is associated with maybe like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Strats and things, but the Super Reverb is just one of the greatest amps of all time, and I think having enough headroom but not too much at 45 watts, you know, it's loud, but it will allow you to break up. It's not a twin and it's not a 100-watt, you know, 2-rock or something. Today, because I wanted to use a couple of pedals to get the final sound, I didn't whack the volume up too high on here. It's on 5.5, so it's alive, but it's not doing anything too crazy and blowing my head off. People have an issue with these, I guess, thinking they're too bright. Yeah, if you turn the volume down too low, let's say 3, then you will have to turn the treble down quite far and use a bit more bass and mids. But at this point in the volume range, you can definitely just set it this way that I have. And then with the pedals, you'll see that, you know, this is the sound I got that I really, really enjoy. It's very bluesy. It's like got enough dynamics and it's very, you know, it's sort of still transparent. I can wind my guitar back nicely. The reverb on these things is wicked, and I'd forgotten to put it on right at the beginning because I didn't want it on for the bass. But yeah, I mean, you have to set it quite low, otherwise it goes completely crazy, wishy-washy. And I mean, you know, back when they sort of started Fender reverbs, I guess the style of music was different as well. So there was a lot of reverb available in these that I don't think gets used particularly. I didn't have the trem on. I love the way that sort of, if you dig in with these, it really bites, but it's they're very dynamic, you know, like boutique makers talk about how dynamic their amps are. Well, these original ones were really. So, and it's not like a Marshall, so it's not too direct, if that makes sense. Sometimes you want that, you know, but for this bluesy stuff, you just want that bit of feel and like sponginess, which you get with this, which I really enjoy. Okay, the pedals. So there's 3 pedals on. There's this fuzz face, which is one of those ones that is so easy to clean up, so nice to clean up, that I could just roll back the volume on my guitar to say 7, and it's not a big fuzzy tone. But part of that is the fact that I have the Jan Ray after it, which is really taming it and also lowering the volume of the whole rig. I wanted to do a video on how to use a great rig but at lower volumes, and really the secret, if you haven't got an attenuator and you don't want to carry around a big attenuator like a Fryette or a Tone King Iron Man or whatever, a Boss Wazza tube thingy, etc., is just to use your favourite overdrive pedal, probably a sort of transparent type like a Jam Ray, a Timmy, that sort of thing, and just turn the volume down until you're happy. It will go lower than the unity volume of your guitar, and that's what I've done here. And it tames the fuzz, it tames the amp, but also gives it a little bit more softness because there's a tiny bit of drive coming through, and it's a dynamic pedal. And then lastly, you saw me kick in at the beginning, this delay. I've had people who come here and haven't tried these Analog Man ones before, and then go off and search high and low to buy one, because it's not just a great delay in terms of the actual delay sound, but the overall sound it gives to your rig. Oh, It's hard to explain actually what it does, but it just, to me, gives it that real old sound. That sound of 60s blues that I want, especially sort of a British blues sound, if you've heard some of those old recordings, the Peter Greens and things of the world. Yeah, I highly recommend this pedal to anyone. It really just is not just a delay, it really adds a warmth to your tone that is gorgeous. And then I'm using the Ditto looper for that bass. And that bass was a parts caster that I put together. It's a precision jazz bass, so it has a jazz bass neck, and it has both types of pickups made by Sun Bear. He makes amazing bass pickups. Wish I knew how to play the bass better. I'm going to practice, I think. This has got a shell pink, and on top of that is like a drab olive that I had painted by my mate Ashley of Time Traveller Guitars, and he relicked it as well. I think it looks great. And I've had to use those stacked pots so I can do both of these pickups like that without a switch. I was originally going to sell this, but I think I should learn how to use it and get better at it, and that will make my loops much better. Right, I want to finish up by telling you exactly how this guitar sort of ended up back here. This is just to say, if you normally watch or listen to these videos without looking at the screen, this next bit of playing has got loads of different messages on screen of my thoughts about the playing I'm doing or what I was thinking or something. So you might like to look at the screen or not. It's up to you. I think it's a new thing I'm trying out. We'll see what you think. So at the beginning of the video, I mentioned how this guitar had come here and then gone, and I finally got it back. And I just wanted to finish this sort of story by telling you what really happened. So I saw this guitar on Ben Yee's Music, which is an Italian retailer, And as I said, I fell in love with it immediately, and I knew of Giordano and I'd wanted one of his guitars. And this is quite a long time back now, maybe a year and a half ago. And yeah, imported it from Italy and absolutely fell in love with the guitar. Thought it was one of the most stunning guitars to look at and to play, although the P90s that came with it weren't my favourite, so I quickly got them changed out. And I kept intending to make a video for the channel about it and how much I loved it. And I built up this guitar in my head so much that in the end I kept letting myself down. Like I probably recorded a whole video 3 or 4 times and recorded clips for it and just kept thinking, I'm not living up to this guitar, I'm not living up to it. And I ended up, for some reason, giving myself this sort of insecurity and self-doubt about this guitar, which I know sounds silly, but it's all part of my journey really. And I ended up selling it or swapping it to Stuart of Sunbear, who loves Giordano guitars, and he fell in love with this guitar. And I'm really glad I did that, because as soon as it left, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I should have just stood back for a minute and let the moment pass and come back to it. Anyway, Stuart fell in love with this, and there was no plan for me to ever have it back. He set it up much better. He's great at setting up guitars. I don't always spend the time to do it with a new guitar. Like, I assume the maker has done it, but Stuart will always put it to his own taste. And he put the KMS bridge on. He's put an amazing capacitor in the back, which I haven't shown you, but a really nice, expensive capacitor. And then, yeah, we've got that staple in there and the vintage P90, and everything just sounds and plays great. And I was over at his house one day, and it was out there, and I just looked at it and I was like, oh God, I really wish I hadn't sold that now. And Stuart basically said, well, look, I don't want to sell this guitar ever, but if you really ever want it, I would only sell it back to you. But I could tell he didn't really want to, but as time passed, I would mention it a few times. And ultimately, I'm very glad he's let me buy it back off him for what, you know, we just swapped the deal back, basically. And straight away, it's in right up at the top of my list of guitars that I love. It's maybe I needed that extra time. I think my playing's improved a bit. I'm a bit more confident. And I guess some people might not understand how a guitar could sort of make you feel intimidated, but I was so impressed with the way it was made, the finish on it, and what this type of guitar is. Such an early type of guitar. I just wanted to make it sound great. And yeah, I'm not saying I've ultimately achieved that. Obviously, there'd be people way better placed to play this type of guitar, but sorry, I'm looking at it off screen, which is silly because you can't see that. It is gorgeous. One of the best looking guitars I've ever seen, to be honest, in the flesh. You'd have to try it. I'm going to stop waxing lyrical about it, and we'll play off out. You'll hear me going through a bit more of that loop. But this is a very special thing, and now I don't aim to let go of it. Sometimes when I get a new guitar on the channel, someone will comment something like, oh, dibs on that guitar when he gets rid of it. And I find that sort of comment quite annoying, to be honest, because I haven't actually sold that many guitars compared to how many I've got. I know people who switch guitars constantly. I never intend to sell a guitar unless it ends up not being for me, in which case, fine. Why would you keep it? But yeah, this one, to be honest, if I didn't have my Dale Wilson Strat, which feels like my number one, this could probably be my number one. It just does everything that I want a guitar to do, and it looks damn cool. And I'll leave it on that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and there'll be a bit more playing. Now, this today was meant to be the video that was I put out on my community post page, which was my whole studio tour that I haven't done in a few years. And I'm part way through making that. It ended up being a much bigger job than I thought, which is great because it's going to be so full of, you know, bits of playing, bits of talking, like every bit of gear in here. But I think it's going to take me another week or two, to be honest, working on it. I've already done a day and a half on it, and I think I'm only 20% of the way through. So yeah, there's quite a lot of stuff in here. So that's why I wanted to fit this video in finally, after a year and a half of trying to do it. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you on Friday, next Friday, for Hendrix Friday. If you don't know what Hendrix Friday is, check back the last video on my channel and the one before that. That's Hendrix Friday 1 and 2, where I do some Hendrix gear, talk about Hendrix stuff, and generally play something Hendrixy and teach you a few licks or something like that, an intro to something. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this one. See you next time.